All right, folks. So, welcome. Got my good friend Tim Anderson here today. I'm sure most of you are familiar with him. We've talked on here before. We're going to have a chat and we're going to talk a little bit about perspective with some sprinkled in talk about gratitude and whatever else may come. It's something that we've talked about for a while and been wanting to get on here and chat. And I think right now it's probably as important as ever with some things going on in the world. There's some things happening that are putting some strain and some anxiety on folks, and I think perspective is a huge tool to have in your toolbox right now. So we're just going to kind of chat about it a little bit. We haven't really rehearsed much or anything, but we've talked about this some in the past. So we're just going to let it fly and kind of see what happens. So welcome, brother Tim.
Thanks for having me, Chad.
So perspective, man. So I guess a good way to start would to be kind of to define what perspective is. So when you think of perspective, what do you think about?
I guess for me, it's just like where I'm coming from. Like what
Yeah,
am I looking through?
yeah. For me, I guess that's kind of the same kind of thought process. I guess like there's the quote out there. And I probably could have pulled it up, but the quote out there about it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. So I guess perspective could be kind of the mental reaction that you have to any given situation. I think
It
would be
it,
one
it
way.
it's mental, but it's a little bit, I think, deeper, broader than that too. I mean, it's going to be based off your experiences, your culture, your habits, your emotions. I think like whatever it is you bring to the table is going to contribute to your perspective.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing about it is, so I'll kind of kick it off with bringing up gas prices. Gas prices is a big stressor right now. Obviously, they're going through the roof, and they're only going to go more through the roof from what I'm hearing. There's things like that that put added stress on you, and how do you have perspective on those kinds of things? And that's one thing I want to say too is that's really hard. I think that having perspective is hard, and I think it's good for folks to know that it's something you have to practice, right? It's not easy, but you have to practice it. How you look at things. So, what I mean is, when something negative or something bad or some kind of stressor happens to you, stop, think, and kind of put a positive perspective on it, a positive spin on it, and practice it. Does that make sense? I think.
Yeah, I mean, like you got like how are you going to react, or or what is important, but I think it's not just how you react. It's like I think you almost have to protect yourself to have a certain amount of perspective. Like if you want to have a particular perspective, you kind of have to protect your ears and your eyes from things as well. You got to have selective hearing, or even selective seeing, if you're trying to maintain a certain perspective to get through certain situations.
So what you're saying is, like, for me, if I know that certain things, I want to stay positive, right? That's part of this. Is I want to keep a positive perspective. I want to keep a positive mindset. So for me, if I know that maybe political stuff upsets me, so to speak, I should maybe not even let that stuff enter my mind, right? Don't look at it. Don't block that stuff off social media, or whatever the case may be. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, because you can gaslight yourself, or you basically invite the stressors to come to you, to fill your head, to actually which now starts to be information that's going to alter your perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I need to work on too, because I'll pass that stuff along and share stuff on social media or whatever. And for me, I see that stuff, and for me, it goes in and out. Honestly, like the political stuff, all that kind of stuff. I see it, I may rant about it, but 2 minutes later, I'm good. I don't. I've trained my mindset, I guess, to the point that that stuff doesn't really affect me long term. I guess you could say, not even really short term. But I guess not everyone is like that. So knowing
No.
yourself a little bit, yeah, yeah, because I mean, you're right. I mean, I know, and I don't want to call him any names, but I mean, I know people that it just dominates their life. You know, just the way that they constantly are getting into it and negative, and you know, and I think about it, but I let it go, and I think some people could do very well with your piece of advice there of like, hey, just block that. Don't even introduce that stuff. I guess.
If you know what your triggers are, it is best to stay away from your triggers. But well, here's a question for you too, because you said you wanted to maintain a good perspective. And my question is, do you want to maintain a good perspective or do you want to maintain a true perspective? Does that, so you're not just trying to paint a Pollyanna picture for yourself in your brain that, just trying to keep a good attitude, but a true perspective where is the information useful to you? Is it true? Or like, are you allowing, false information to lead your perspective?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. I really think kind of both because you don't want to lie to yourself, right? I mean, you don't want to create a false reality of everything's peachy when it's maybe not. But it and maybe fuel prices is a good example of that because honestly, it sucks. It sucks to have to pay that extra dollar a gallon or whatever it is now or gonna be, and that cuts into your budget quite a bit, and it really puts stressors on you, making you have to think. So it is a reality that you don't need to just, I guess, in regards to your question, for me as far as fuel prices, I don't need to just ignore the fact that the increase in fuel prices exist, but I do need to put a positive spin on it as far as I could say, okay, fuel is going to cost me an extra $100 a month. All right, now what in my budget can I cut out, and take a look and go, okay, yeah, I don't really need, satellite radio, or I don't really need Netflix or Hulu or whatever those extra costs may be, and kind of think of it more in a positive light of, yeah, I didn't need that stuff anyway, as opposed to you could be like, man, now I got to give up Hulu and Netflix and satellite radio, and I love it. And, whine about it. Really, it's that thinking, I didn't need that stuff anyway, versus whining about it. I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But also too, you're talking about being able to take information and then appropriately act on it. You'll know, and you're okay. So, but
Yeah,
another person could take that same information and worry about it. And it doesn't
yeah,
matter what kind of action they take on it because they're so worried about it that it consumes them. Like, so their perspective is the sky is falling and everything's horrible. But and the information is the same and the situation could be the same, but it is there. If they're a worrier, then it's way worse for them because they create their
yeah.
own hell with it versus where you're able to take appropriate action to deal with it. And in your mind, you've dealt with it and everything's fine.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. You create your own hell because I was looking at some quotes earlier with a little bit of prep I did for this, and there's a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "To different minds, the same world is a hell and a heaven."
Yes.
Like, yeah, the same exact circumstance to one person it's a hell, to another person it's a heaven. You know,
And so for the exact same person though, on any given day, it can be a hell or a heaven. I am such a person where I easily can waffle between or vacillate between today's going to be a good day. It is a good day. I can deal with whatever. And then another day might be, well, dang, it's just, and it could be the same
yeah,
type of stuff that happened in a day. And it's just totally hits me in a different way.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Well, and I
so
think I think that one important thing to point out for people to understand is like we all whine, right? We all whine about petty stuff. It's just how long before you reset, before you snap and clear, whatever it is, you know, because, okay, so for example, this morning I text my wife. You can see I'm in my camper right now. I've got to pack up my camper and take it over to a dealership to get some little light maintenance done on it Saturday. The weather's been pretty nice, other than a little bit of rain and whatnot. Well, Saturday morning is going to be like in the teens here. And I was like, oh, great. It's going to be in the teens here. So I'm going to be freezing my butt off trying to get this camper packed up and, all the things that come with getting a camper hooked up to a truck. And it's a fairly lengthy process, but not bad. And here I am whining about it. But the reality is I'm going to be outside in the cold for maybe 30 minutes. I've got clothes, I've got jackets, I've got gloves if I need them. I've got whatever I need to stay generally warm. And then I'm going to get in a very nice vehicle with a heater and drive for quite a while. So, like, it's that difference. And yes, I whine about it. And man, golly, I might have to get out in the cold and get this thing done. But at the same time, realizing, like, bro, it's not that bad. Like, it could always be worse. So I think those everyday trivial things, you understand you are going to whine about them. It's just kind of clearing it out and thinking, okay, it's not that bad, and moving on with your day, I guess.
Yeah, I think what it is though is you're giving yourself permission to suffer a little bit, but you're not giving yourself permission to stay there. So,
Yeah, yeah. Don't stay there. Right,
right.
right.
And
Yeah,
that's how people live in hell is that they just continue to suffer, and they can't get out of it.
yeah,
Versus, you're going to get out of it. You're going to pack your stuff up regardless of what the weather's doing, and you're going to go home. Like,
yeah, yeah. I think in most things, obviously there's extreme circumstances and whatnot, health issues, different things. But in most things, I think you can find a positive light to put it in and realize that it's not the end of the world. Yeah, something may suck a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. So my next question would be, how do you get that perspective? What gives you that perspective? You got one on that?
I don't. I mean, I think you have to want better, or you know what I mean.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
gotta want not to hurt or not to suffer. You gotta want not to be afraid. You gotta want to
yeah,
because it all ultimately comes down to a choice anyway. Like, what kind of person do I want to be? Do I want to be a useful person, a happy person, or do I want to be a useless, self-absorbed person? Like, I think really it comes
yeah,
down to who do we want to be, and how bad do we want to be that person?
yeah. And so here's where I'm coming from with this is for me, you get perspective through past experiences, and that's not the only place, right? You can get perspective from just trying to have a positive mindset, but you can get a lot of perspective from past experiences. And so for me, some things that I think about, I mean, there's a bunch, but obviously my 20 years in the military was a 6, 7 deployment, something like that. I saw a lot of things that gave me perspective. I've probably used this with my kids. I can still remember Afghanistan. I think it was my first time there in 2003. I just remember this little girl. I've got a picture of her somewhere, but I remember this little girl sitting in her mud hut, their house, and she had this little ragged doll and a couple little other items. I can't even remember what they were, and that's all she had in the world. And she's sitting there dirty as all get out, and she's just smiling and happy, and smiled at us and whatnot. And I just remember that moment and thinking, gosh, she smiles, she's happy, and she's got nothing. Like she's physically she's got nothing, and material wise, she's got nothing, but she's happy. And that's something that I think back, and like when our kids or my kids, the Wi-Fi quits working. Oh gosh, sky's going to fall if the Wi-Fi quits working, or we're in a place that doesn't have a good cell signal, or whenever. So having that perspective of being able to say, look and see what this person and what they live. So that and just little things. There's a lot of little things I've had. I can remember. like I see people complaining today about they go to the grocery store and their favorite little snack or whatever, they can't find it, and that sort of thing. And I'm like, many deployments
Okay.
I didn't
All right.
have.
But see, that's the thing though. Like you, with your history and your service, you've lived, you've lived, period. You've lived the experiences that most people, fortunately, don't have to or haven't had to yet experience, right? So, and through your experiences, you're able to develop things like empathy, gratitude, like all this, these things that build because of the experiences that you went through and then made it through to the other side of. Like I how many, how, like, what do you think the percentage of our this country, the United States population is of people that have gone through such experiences like that? And we all live through trying times.
Yeah.
And it is our experiences that make us and do help build our perspective for sure. But for you, definitely like doing tours in Afghanistan, getting in
Yeah.
gunfights, gun battles, like
Yeah.
seeing people get hurt or killed.
Yeah, and that's all good, but I think too, I don't think that you need to have had those experiences to
No,
gain that perspective. You know what I mean? I think people hearing those kind of stories, if I can tell you that about the little girl, or if I can tell you that, there was a time in Afghanistan I really loved pizza combos, and you couldn't get them over there. Obviously, I couldn't get them over there, and my mom would send them to me in a care package, and I would literally take a bag of pizza combos, stick them underneath my pillow when we were back in our base, and I would eat like two or three a night, and just kind of savor them. And I would make that bag last as long as I could till the next care package came in, and that's what I did. And it's kind of silly, but I think people hearing those kind of stories. Look at Ukraine right now. The situation that's going on in Ukraine. People can see these images of families living in a subway with their children, and that sort of thing. And I think you can gain perspective from just seeing and empathizing with those situations. You know what I mean? So I don't think you necessarily have to live it. You just have to see that and understand and have a little empathy for that.
it does. Seeing it helps, but also like so. All right, so the person that gets upset because their favorite food's not at the store, right? It is possible that they many people haven't, and not everybody, but this is possible that a lot of people don't have the experience of lack, and so it is hard to understand,
Yeah.
lack or being
Yeah.
without something. Like it is amazing for my kids. I have teenagers, college age, but if the power goes out, like they don't know what that's like. Like, what do you do? What
Yeah.
what happens now? Like all the weird questions that they ask. I'm like, what are you talking about? The power's out. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
It'll come back on eventually. I
Yeah.
mean, but it's just neat though, because they in their lifetime, they made it almost 20 years. They haven't had a lot of, impactful experiences, like which on the one hand, I'm glad that they've been protected, but I also want them to be able to handle the world and deal with things and be able to think through things and solve problems and be okay about what happens. Not that they
Yeah.
lose their mind over the power going out, but it is interesting to watch what happens when the power goes out, and that's nothing
Yeah. Because when I was a kid, the power went out quite a bit, right? Like, I
all the
mean,
time.
yeah. Yeah. So it was, and I actually enjoyed it. And you know what? I find myself kind of missing that. I kind of, it may sound weird, but I do, like, we get these thunderstorms come through and we never lose power. And I'm like, man, but I kind of enjoy that adversity, that situation, of figuring stuff out or whatever. So, that's a good point, and I don't want to really go down that road of kids today necessarily, but it is a good point about, I mean, the way people are growing up now, those simple things of not losing power, the world at their fingertips with the internet, those sorts of things. And it's kind of funny in that way too, that, people now, you have the world at your fingertips, so you can easily see how good or bad people live in other places in the world. But I don't think a lot of people take that and go, man, I got it good. That gratitude piece. So talking about gratitude as well, because I think gratitude is I think something that can help you with having that perspective, or is key in having a good or positive perspective, is gratitude. Because if I can stop and think, well, man, I may not have that, but I've got this. I think that could really help a lot of folks.
Even if you can't, gratitude's interesting because it is clearly a choice. But I think our bodies are made for gratitude. Like we're made to have joy and to be grateful and thankful. And like an easy example would be like it, and it might be a hard decision to be thankful or grateful for something, but it's a choice. But so is smiling, right? So like if you're grateful, a lot of times you can smile. And what I've learned over the last couple of years is that even if you can't be mentally grateful for something, you can still smile, and that actually helps because it does something in your nervous system. So you can choose to smile and you will feel better. You feel better. And
Yeah,
so like if you want, so it might be hard to be grateful for, like you maybe have to work up to it, but even just smiling could be a stepping stone to becoming grateful. And the whole point to that is I was doing this talk with some people and I was showing them how smiling affects how their body moves. And it hit me that that whole, you've ever heard fake it till you make it?
yeah,
Well, there's what if you're not faking it? What if you're doing an action, you're taking an action to get what you want? What if smiling is just a simple action to get what you want, which is great, to be grateful, to be happy. But
yeah,
you have to take the action to get there because the nervous system doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. So is it really faking
yeah,
it then? Because your nervous system can't tell the difference. So that's why even if you're not happy and you smile, your nervous system responds as if you're happy because the action
yeah.
is being made.
That's interesting, man. That's interesting, the smiling thing, because I've done something. I've tried to practice something similar. Um, so for people that don't know, I come stay in the camper and I'm going through this. I've talked about this on the show, but if you haven't listened before, I've learning how to fly helicopters, and I'm currently working on my instructor certificate. So I come to a location pretty good ways from my home, stay in a camper. While I'm here, I'm pretty much focused on that studying and whatnot. And there's days like today where it's cloudy, several days in a row. It'll be cloudy, gloomy, whatnot. Maybe I didn't eat the best, or whatever the case may be, and I just kind of feel draggy or maybe a little burnout or whatever, and I just kind of have a reset, sit up straight, you know, and I just smile in a way, maybe not a physical smile, but go, man, things are good. You know what, things are good.
It's the same
I'm
thing.
having a great time, and you just feel better.
Yes.
You just feel better. And
I,
that's what I say about practicing it. You have to practice it.
and it's not a lie. You're not lying to yourself. You're taking action to get what you want. You're
Right.
taking a step towards having what it is you want to actually have to that to that expression.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge, man. That's huge. It's your mindset, right? It's how you're reacting to your environment and your situation. Yeah, that's huge. And that was another. The Shakespeare quote was on this page I pulled up too. Is there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so.
That's the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Right. Right.
That's the tree. Hey, stay away from that tree because
Yeah.
now you created this or that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge, man. It's stop and if you've got something, stop and think, is it a problem or is it an opportunity as well? I think that's another way. So trying to think positive, but also if you've got something that you perceive as a problem, try to stop and think, is this a problem or is it an opportunity? That's something else that I've kind of tried to put in practice, because there's always a chance to get better, right?
Well, you mentioned that when COVID started and the gym was shut down, somewhere in a conversation you said the same thing about being a problem or an opportunity, and that kind of stuck with me because I was like, well, that means it's my choice.
Yeah.
you know, I get to choose, is this a problem or is this an opportunity for me to find something else to do or to build something else, right? So that was actually a helpful thought process because it does take a lot of the victimhood out of it
Yeah.
as well.
Well, it's the same as the old adage in the military everybody likes to use: adapt and overcome. Adapt and overcome to me is the same as is asking yourself, is it a problem or an opportunity? Or very, very similar. Um, you know, because I mean, I'm trying to think of any examples in my head real quick, but it's something that I've tried to practice here doing my training and whatnot. Are things a problem, or is it an opportunity? Like there's been some particular maneuvers that I've struggled with, and a lot of times if people struggle with something, they'll shy away from it. But in this situation of my helicopter training, I run to it and make it an opportunity of, I got to get better. And a lot of times, and this is maybe down another path, but a lot of times I've always believed that uh, sometimes you got to do stuff wrong before you do it right. Or at
Well,
least
that's how
that's
you learn.
how I get
That's
stuff.
how you learn, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
you make mistakes so that you learn not to, so that
yeah, yeah, yeah,
whatever outcome you're looking for gets a little bit closer.
yeah. Yeah, I would like to get everything right the first time, but that's just not a reality for me a lot of times.
Yeah, it didn't happen for
Uh,
me either.
but that's how we learn, right? Yeah, no. Is it a problem or is it an opportunity? To me, that's a big one, because I think almost any problem could become an opportunity if you find a way. Some stuff's
Well,
worse than others, but
yeah. Well, even if it's a problem, right? Like everything has a solution. so
yeah,
so you do still have the opportunity to
yeah,
find a solution.
yeah. You can either sit and dwell on it, or you can move. You can either stay in your comfort zone or stay in your whiny comfort zone and complain, or you can move and figure it out and keep going. I think that's a big difference in some people being successful or not. Something else I was thinking about too, man, is a story with regard to this and perspective and gratitude. I had a job working for DOE for a little bit, and I remember I had to go take a physical, do some medical stuff when I first got hired on. And I was sitting in the waiting room there, and this old man comes in. He had to be about 80, old guy. And he worked there, and clearly he worked in some sort of manual labor type capacity. You could look at his hands, his face. You could tell this is a man that had worked with his hands and been outside quite a bit of his life. And he walks in smiling. There's some other guy in there that knows him, and I can't remember what his name was now, but he's like, "Hey, Joe, how's things going?" And the old man sat down and he said, if it was any better, I couldn't stand it. And I'm thinking, here's this guy easily in his 70s, maybe 80. He's working. He's clearly worked very hard. He's still working. He's not retired, and whatever. But to him, at least the aura that he's putting off is, life couldn't be any better. And to me, I looked at that and that stuck with me, thinking, man, he's winning. He's winning. He's successful. Now that guy could have a ton of turmoil going on at home. I don't know, but what he projected to me at that moment was like, all right, man, no excuses. Stop complaining. Because here's this guy, not retired, not on a beach somewhere or whatever. He's there working hard and clearly has worked very hard most of his life, and he's just happy as can be. So, was he in reality entirely happy? Who knows? But his perspective at that point was that life couldn't be any better.
And it sounds like he may have learned how to chop wood and carry water.
I maybe, but yeah. So anyway, man, I don't. I guess that's really kind of all all I had on it really was just trying to get across to people, your perspective on things can mean a lot, along with your gratitude, which I think go kind of hand in hand, and then trying to, try to practice a positive perspective, or practicing gratitude of, oh, this sucks. Well, yeah, but could be worse, kind of thing. You know, it's just a mental exercise, really, I guess, right?
It is. One thing that helped me is I had a friend tell me, because I was whining about something, and he's like, "Your problem is you're attached to the outcome, and you need to let go of the outcome." And he was right, because it wasn't going the way I wanted, and it pissed me off.
Yeah,
And he's right. It was I was holding on to the outcome, which I did not have. So, but I was
yeah,
holding on to it, and it was making I was choosing to be miserable because of it.
yeah,
So that's that whole, which is crazy, right? Like it's a non-attachment thing. When you can let go of stuff, you're a lot happier, because you're
yeah.
not trying to hold on to the outcomes that you're expecting or creating.
Yeah, I've heard Inky Johnson talk about that quite a bit, letting go of the outcome if you're attached to the outcome, kind of thing. Pretty much what you just said, but yeah, Inky Johnson, motivational speaker. He's another guy that I look at, and like I was talking about earlier, I don't think you necessarily have to have certain experiences to have a perspective based off of. So like I've read he's got a book out about him growing up, and he's talking about how he had to sleep in the bed with like 8 kids sleeping in a bed, but they had more than that in the house, and they would rotate. And so some nights you might be on the floor or whatever, but it was always a good thing when you had your night that you got to be in the bed. And then he was University of Tennessee football player, and he was recruited by the University of Tennessee. And when he came there on his recruiting visit, um, he was put up in a real nice motel. Obviously, they're trying to get him to come to the University of Tennessee. Well, and then these guys that were kind of escorting him around on his recruiting visit come to him that night at the motel, and they want him to go out and go partying with them or whatever, or go hang out at a club or something. And he's like, no, man, he wanted to stay. He was so excited about this hotel room and having his own bed. He wanted to stay in there. And perspective. So, you know, just for me hearing, I didn't grow up that way, but hearing that story and going, man, okay, yeah, I've had a pretty dang good life. Not that that's a bad life, but for me, I think, man, I'm glad I didn't have to do that. But just hearing those kind of stories, I think can give you that little bit of perspective too, even though you've not lived it. But yeah, he's great. Look up Inky John. If you don't know who Inky Johnson is, I highly recommend look him up. He's all over YouTube and everything else. Super super guy. He was hurting a football game. I was at the football game actually, and he got hurt pretty badly, and one arm doesn't work. And I don't know. Look up his story because it's amazing. It's pretty amazing. He's a great speaker. He's up there close to Eric Thomas. Sorry, I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know why I said Eric Johnson, but Eric Thomas. So yeah. Again, it was not. I know I caught you off guard with some questions there, but that was kind of my point too. Was I wanted to get a little spontaneity out of you. I want to make you think a little bit.
Well, you have, and I want to not do a retraction, but I said you'd lived, and that your experiences in the military help create, you and your perspective. But at the same time, you still had a compass pointing you to a certain way you wanted to be, because other people could have had and did probably, people that did those same experiences with you, and they were barely holding on, surviving it all, but yet somehow you were still able to thrive off of combos hidden under your pillow, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So so it is, though, still there was something in you, like you were choosing to, even through all of that, to point a certain way, or to have you wanted to be a certain way. um or to have a certain perspective still through that. So, but it all compounds and still though creates more of who you are.
Yeah, I've got a lot of gratitude towards how God made me because of what you just said. Being able to, you know, being able to take those experiences and learn from them, and then going through some of the experiences I've been through and not being debilitated by them, I guess is the way I'll put it.
Right.
Because I've been through the same exact experiences as a lot of people and seen them come out from them in a bad way. I'll just say, and it's not one of those things I can necessarily explain. I just know that I was fortunate and blessed to not have the same fate, I guess, or same thoughts or whatever.
So I think what we're talking about there is resiliency. You had something in you that kept you and made you resilient. Um, and right now on the world stage, you're seeing like the same thing from you, the Ukrainians. Like there's a resiliency
Yeah,
there, and because you know it when you see it.
yeah, yeah,
And I'm sure you recognize it, but
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, um, absolutely. Yeah, those people right now, they're gaining a lot of perspective right now if they didn't have it already. I mean, look, they already have have it worse than Americans, I guess, in a general sense. But a lot of them don't know it either. You don't know, it's the same thing. Like if you grow up blind, you don't know what it's like to see, right? So you just don't know. Well, the way they grow up, if you've grown up your entire life in Ukraine and the way things are there, you don't know that it's better anywhere else. You don't know what that's like. So a lot of them, they already have a different way of looking at things, but now especially they've got a different perspective after having somebody come knock on your door. And
I tell you
so,
what, though, I think most of the world, it's hard not to admire their resiliency, though. Like
yeah,
I, man, I'm, it's awesome. Like, and
yeah,
I hope they just keep going. It's awesome.
yeah. And let me just say this too. It's, when the stories come out, it's hard sometimes to know what's propaganda and what's real, but sprinkled in there's a lot of real. And I mean, you can't deny what's taking place, really. I mean, we know what's taking place. And so for those people to stay and fight and show that resilience, you just got to ask yourself, what would you do if a so-called superpower comes knocking on your door? I mean, as I've had these conversations. Being in the military, we've had these conversations about things like, what if, and it's a huge what if, because but like Canada, what if Canada came down here and invaded, and they come knock on your door, and they tell you, hey, you're either going to join us and help us out, or we're going to kill your family. What are you going to do? And that's a perspective as well. And that was one that we used to talk about that with like the Taliban. So like the Afghanis, not necessarily Taliban, but the Afghanis. If Taliban comes knocking on your door, you're an Afghani man trying to take care of your family, and they say, you're going to join us, or we're going to kill you and your entire family. What are you going to do? You know, I mean, that's tough. And not that not that the Russians are doing that to the Ukrainians. They may be in some places. I don't know. We won't know till after the fact. But what would you do if somebody comes into your town to take over? And you see what they're doing for the most part. I mean, again, it's hard to know exactly what's going on everywhere, but there's a lot of people they're bucking up and showing some of that resiliency big time.
Yeah,
And it is inspiring.
it is. It is. I don't know what I would do because
Yeah.
sometimes you don't know till you're there.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. I just, not to go down this rabbit hole either, but I I mostly try to keep my mouth shut on or my fingers closed, I guess, on social media, because you see all the people talking about how badass they would be, and and
Yeah.
those sorts of
I think
things. And I'm like, yeah,
it's kind of like what Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson may have both said it. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, and then
yeah,
it's real. So,
yeah,
I mean, you can talk whatever
yeah,
you want, but until you're punched in the
yeah,
face, what's what now? So, but
yeah.
I it is it's an unfortunate situation, but they definitely have my attention.
All right, man. Well, before we go down too many rabbit holes, you got anything else on the whole perspective gratitude thing?
No, man, I'm very grateful I got to talk to you today, Chad. It's good to see
I'm grateful every day I get to talk to you, my friend. For those of you that don't know, Tim and I we talk on Marco Polo quite a bit. The app there, and if you're not familiar with that app, just look it up. But it's a cool little back and forth messaging app, and we have great conversations. And so part of this is trying to bring them to other people that may help out. So hopefully somebody got something out of this. And if you've got any questions or whatever, hit us up. This is going to be on YouTube, so comment section or whatever. But I appreciate you talking to me, man. I'm grateful for you talking to me.
you. Thanks, buddy.
See you, man.
See you.